Estamos grabando la clase de UDLA del día viernes 10 de septiembre, grupo 2, no, grupo 3, siempre me equivoco, perdón, chiquillos. Este es el grupo, ¿qué grupo es este? Mis cursos, grupo 3. Primero que voy a decir antes de comenzar es dar las gracias y agradecer públicamente al profesor Leandro Díaz, que nos facilitó este PPT que le pertenece a él. Así que muchas gracias al profesor Leandro. Lo vamos a ocupar hoy día para poder hablar un par de cosas. Okay, so I'm going to begin. The idea today, then, as I said before, is trying to move from trying to review a couple of things. Like the very first stuff we're going to review is the difference between independent and dependent clauses. Then we're going to review the complex sentence, and we will add three more contents: the nominal clause, the adjectival clause, and the adverbial clause. Finally, we're going to go further into coordination and trying to solve problems around that idea, to finish today with a review of the workshop I sent you last week. So I'm going to read this. We have already seen this like innumerable numbers of time, like several different times, but we're going to read it just in case. Okay, so sentence and clauses. First off, a sentence is a grammatical structure made up of one or more clauses, and we know that, right? It's the last element in the grammatical hierarchy, and the sentence is created by clauses, one or more clauses. Second point, a clause is a group of words. No, it is not a group of words. A clause is a group of phrases. And one of those phrases must be a verb phrase. This is extremely important. A clause is a group of phrases, and one of those phrases must be a verb phrase. Therefore, a clause is a group of phrases with its own subject and verb. So the idea of a subject and a verb, then it is made or it is created by the presence of this verb phrase I was talking about. So for example, the woman is beautiful is a clause. Why? Because it is composed of phrases. Which are those phrases? The woman, a noun phrase, is a verb phrase, and beautiful, an adjective phrase. And the second point, one of those phrases must be a verb phrase. So where's the verb phrase? The verb phrase is in the middle. The verb phrase is. The same happens with the second clause, which is composed of phrases. So what are those phrases? The first phrase is who, a noun phrase, was wearing, verb phrase, and glasses, noun phrase, and it works in the very same way as the other one. It is different from a phrase, that is to say, clauses are different from phrases in that a phrase doesn't include a subject and a verb relationship. This is also extremely important. Phrases are not clauses. Why? Because a phrase does not have a subject-verb relationship. What does it mean? It means that in a clause, you have this idea of subject, verb, object, complement, valency pattern. Inside of a phrase, you don't have that. Okay. Therefore, there are two types of clauses: independent and dependent clauses. Any problem? No? Okay, I'll move on. An independent clause then can stand on its own, right? An independent clause can stand on its own, which means that it makes sense on its own. I don't like that term. I don't like that concept because it is not clear enough, I would say. Therefore, I prefer the second one. An independent clause can be its own sentence, but very often they are part of larger structures. They are also called main clauses. That is to say that an independent clause can be a sentence. Again, that is to say, an independent clause is a simple sentence. Write it. I strongly suggest you to write that down. Therefore, we have this example. These holes are called kettles, and and those holes looks and those holes look just like pots. Oh, perdón. I'm gonna make this stuff bigger. Okay, those holes are called kettles, and the holes look just like pots. Okay, I'm going to try to provide an analysis out of this. And the very first stuff I have to say is that there's a coordinating conjunction. This one. Therefore, there's coordination of something in here. The question is, what is this coordinating subjunction, coordinating conjunction? What is this linking? These holes are called kettles, and the holes look just like pots. Clearly, that coordinating conjunction is linking two different clauses, independent clauses. So it's linking this with this, right? Right. I'm going to change a little bit the way in which I'm going to analyze this. Okay. So the very first stuff I'm going to say is writing down that this is an independent clause. Then this independent clause is created by phrases, right? Because it's a clause. Which are those phrases? Are called kettles and these holes. So three different phrases. One, two, three. The first one is these holes, which is the noun phrase subject created by, okay, we know that, right? Determiner, premodifier, and then holes, the noun head. Then we have are called, which is the verb phrase verb created by are called, the auxiliary verb, premodifier, and the verb head called. Then kettles, which is a noun phrase object made out of the noun head. And that's it. On the other side, we have the very same stuff. This is another independent clause, dependent clause made out of phrases. What are those phrases? The holes look just like pots, look just like, just like, look like. Uy, está difícil. The holes, ya yo sé que está el subject. Look, ahí hay un verbo. Just, yo diría que es así. Noun phrase subjects, the holes, determiner, premodifier, holes, look, just like pots, just like pots, just like. Yo diría que just like es raro, es una cláusula. Lo vamos a dejar en signo de interrogación para no enredarnos más. El que lo quiera saber, según yo, es una non-finite clause, pero la vamos a dejar ahí nomás. Okay, the interesting thing about this form of analysis is this. As you can see, an independent clause is created by phrases. One of these phrases must be a verb phrase, right? Here we have another independent clause, which is also created by phrases in most cases, right? And it has a verb phrase, okay? What is important to me is that you realize the fact that independent clauses can stand on their own because they make sense. I don't like that definition. The best definition would be an independent clause, right? Is a clause which with sufficient context, right? So you can clearly understand what you're talking about on the one hand, and on the other hand, it is made out of a clear valency pattern, right? I would say so. I would say so. That's the stuff about the independent clause that we're talking about. And the other one is this: the coordinating conjunction, coordinating conjunction is used to link or to join equivalent equivalent elements. That is to say, it links or it joins independent clauses. Both of them must be the same. Both are independent clauses. Okay? Wait. Therefore, a coordinating conjunction creates a paratactic relationship. Paratactic relationship, which means that the link is created out of two different elements which are at the same level. That is to say, both of them are independent clauses. Any question? No? Okay. On the other hand, dependent clauses, they cannot stand on their own, so they depend on another clause. Okay, this is interesting because dependent clauses, they don't have enough context. So in order to understand them, they must be linked or attached or joined to an independent clause. It's not any other clause, right? It's an independent clause. Okay, so that's the very first definition. Note, be careful because later on you will see that dependent clauses can be encountered inside of phrases, right? So you have to be careful about that. Second point, as dependent clauses can stand on their own and they must be attached to something else, then they are considered as sentence fragments and not as pure sentences. Do you remember that independent clauses can be considered to be simple sentences, mainly because they have enough meaning, right? And because sentences are created out by one or more clauses. So in this case, in this specific case, dependent clauses can't be or they can't turn into a sentence because they don't have enough meaning, right? And because they are sentence fragments. Third point, really important. Dependent clause is a name, a term, but they are also known as subordinate clauses, right? Subordinate clause. That's another name for a dependent clause. So, okay, we're going to take a look at this. The internet, which started out as a means of military and academic types to share documents, has become a household necessity. Okay, this is a very difficult sentence because it's very long. And if I ask you to provide a syntactic analysis, probably you'll have problems. Why? Well, mostly because as you can see, there are several different verbs inside of it. So basically what we are seeing is the presence of one independent clause with dependent clauses inside. In other words, one independent clause with subordinate clauses inside. So the question is, where are they, right? The very first thing we're going to do is trying to look for the main verb phrase. When I'm saying main verb phrase, I'm talking about the verb phrase that comes in the independent clause. So we're going to take a look at this. The internet, which started out as a means for military and academic types to share documents, has become a household necessity. And as you can see, the internet has become a household necessity. Yeah, I think that that would be the main verb phrase, right? Has become, has become. Okay, I'm going to change the disposition. So, okay, and we're going to move a little bit. Okay, good. Now, has become is the has so has become. What has become a household necessity? The internet, which started out as a means. Oh, so all this is the subject. Again, Has become is the verb phrase. Then I'm going to use the verb phrase in order to find out the subject. So I'm going to ask who. Who has become the internet, which started out as a means for, right? Right. Now I'm going to try to prove it again. Supposedly, I can replace an entire noun phrase by a pronoun by using a pronoun. So I'm going to use a pronoun, right? So the internet has become it, and it replaces the entire thing. So this means this whole stuff is a noun phrase, right? Has become what? A household necessity. This is another noun phrase. So I'm going to provide the very same analysis on top of it, just because of it is just a matter of arrangement, right? If you do it in the previous form, no problem. If you do it in this form, no problem. Okay. So I would say that the internet, which started out as a means for military and academic types to share documents, has become a household necessity. This whole stuff is the noun phrase subject. Has become is the verb phrase verb. Crap. Verb phrase verb. And the household necessity is another noun phrase, but in this case, the receiver of the action, therefore an object. The internet, right? So the is a determiner, premodifier, internet is the noun head. And then I have a very big stuff, which started out as a means for military and academic types to share documents. What we're seeing there is a dependent clause. This dependent clause then is inside, and it goes till the very end, right? This dependent clause is inside of a noun phrase, as you can see in our analysis, right? And the name for this was relative clause, right? Or dependent clause. We're going to write down dependent clause. Dependent clause. Then the real name is WH relative clause anyway. And this is a post modifier. That is to say, I can erase it, right? The internet has become, and that's it. Then what's inside of it? I have to, well, as I said, clause, there are phrases inside. So I'm going to take a look at the verb phrase, therefore the subject, which started out is the this is the verb phrase as a means for military and academics types to share documents. This is really difficult because we have another clause inside of this. Right? Right. I won't do it anymore because it goes against the I mean,
Profe, ¿cuál es la otra clause? ¿Desde which
parte con
a dónde?
parte ¿cuál? Perdón, no le entiendo la pregunta.
Es que acaba de decir que hay otra clause y es que puso ahora de nuevo una...
Por ese.
Sí, no, esa la entendí, pero puso ahora una en which.
No, esa la puse, esa es la primera. Esta es la que parte en which y termina en documents. Luego está which como sujeto, started out como verbo, y aquí parte la que tiene as, que parte de aquí hasta documents.
Ah, ya. Ok.
¿Sí? Lo importante y lo interesante de este ejemplo es el siguiente. Primera cosa importante, uno, dependent clauses pueden estar adentro, dependent clauses pueden estar adentro adentro de frases. Inside phrases. Eso es lo primero interesante. Dos, que puedo hacer coordinación de cualquier cosa, como por ejemplo, ese and, lo que está uniendo es, voy a apurarme aquí, perdón, es military and academic. Entonces lo que está uniendo and son dos adjetivos premodifier de types. Entonces la coordinación es de lo que sea, desde oraciones, coordination. La coordinación parte en sentence allá arriba y termina acá abajo en morphemes. Puedo tener morphemes coordinados. ¿Ya? El primer punto también es interesante. En el slide anterior se decía que las dependent clauses son fragmentos de oraciones. Ya, yo estoy de acuerdo con eso. Y decía que se les pegaba a que las dependent clauses, como no tienen significado completo o contextual completo, deben ser pegadas, la palabra pegadas, deben ser linkeadas o subordinadas a independent clauses. Pero aquí vemos que no es solo con independent clauses, también con frases. Em, Tip hacia adelante. Los valency patterns de una cláusula también pueden ser realizados por dependent clauses. ¿Qué quiero decir? Que el sujeto puede ser una dependent clause que actúe como sujeto. Que el objeto también puede ser una dependent clause que actúe como objeto. Lo vamos a ver. Lo que quiere decir esto es que sí, pues las dependent clauses son fragmentos de oración y las independent son oraciones. Ejemplos. Dependent clause, independent clause. If the boss tells a joke, he is not joking. No tiene ningún sentido, pero if the boss tells a joke, he is not joking. Uh, the very first one, if the boss tells a joke, is a dependent clause. Why? Well, because of the context, I won't say much because we can prove it, but I can see it's a dependent clause because of the presence of the subordinating conjunction if at the very beginning of it, right? Which means which means the presence of if means that this dependent clause must be attached to something else, and that something else can be an independent clause. Second example, when the Great Fire of London took place, half of London was burned. I can see that the dependent clause is a dependent clause because of the presence of the subordinating conjunction when, right? When the Great Fire of London, right? Then, third example, before the Romans had elections, people had to wear togas. Before the Romans had elections, people had to wear togas. I can see that the dependent clause is a dependent clause because of the presence of the subordinate conjunction before. So the thing we learn out of this slide is the fact that a dependent clause begins with a very special word. That special word is called dependent, no, sorry, is called subordinate conjunction. Subordinate conjunction. Right? Right. Okay. This is not that interesting and nor important, but we will read it anyway. Independent clauses can be subdivided into declarative. They have subject and predicate structure. When I say predicate, I'm talking about all the rest of the sentence, which is not the subject, right? And typically expresses statements. An independent clause can be interrogative, and they can be of three different forms. WH questions, because they begin with a WH word. Yes, no questions. Are you happy? Because you answer to them with a yes and no. Then finally, alternative questions. So you can choose out of a range of possibilities. Nothing interesting. Independent clauses can be exclamative clauses. Nothing new. Imperative clauses. Okay, an imperative clause is different because with imperatives, they are orders, right? An imperative clause, it's an order, right? Like jump, stand up, get off the table, do not enter, right? Those are like request, strong request orders to the receiver of the information. The interesting thing about imperatives is the fact that they don't have subject, and perhaps is the only way and is the only possibility for an English clause to not have a subject, not to have Yeah, not to have a subject. Right. Okay, I won't say much about this, and that's all. Okay, with this, we have reviewed again the idea of independent and dependent clauses and the fact that you can link them in order to create. If you link an independent and a dependent, you will create a complex sentence. And if you link two simple clauses, two independent clauses, you will have then a compound sentence. Okay. Tienen este PPT en su Gmail. Vamos a avanzar hacia el famoso PPT que ya hemos visto millones de veces, lo hemos trabajado caleta de veces. Voy a ir avanzando hasta donde habíamos quedado. Vamos a hacer el resumen igual. Complex compound sentences and subordination. Lo vuelvo a leer. A complex sentence is an independent clause joined with one or more dependent clauses. Lo hemos hablado hasta el cansancio. A subordinating conjunction begins the dependent clauses. Lo hemos hablado hasta el cansancio. A dependent clause that begins a sentence must be followed by comma. También lo hemos hablado hasta el cansancio. A dependent clause has a subject and a verb, but it doesn't make sense on its own. También lo hemos hablado hasta el cansancio. Ejemplos, no voy a decir nada de ellos. Compound complex, esta es la que no hemos saltado. Y llegamos aquí. Dependent clauses. A subordinate clause is a clause that supports ideas stated in the main clause. It is true. It is true because as dependent clauses, that is to say, subordinate clauses, they don't have enough context. They can't be understood without making reference to the independent clause, which they are linked to, right? Therefore, they represent basically supporting ideas. Subordinate clauses are also dependent clauses on main and would be otherwise incomprehensible without them. Yeah, we know that. So the examples for dependent clauses, that is to say, subordinate clauses are because she was sick, who was in the middle of the road, and whatever you do, right? Right. Subordination. Subordination means the process of linking a dependent to an independent clause. There are two kinds of clauses. We know that main clauses and subordinate clauses. We know that a main clause, also called independent clause, can stand by itself and make sense. We know that. A subordinate clause, also called a dependent clause, is a group of words that contains a subject and a predicate, but depends on the main clause to complete its meaning. We know that. Therefore, we will not leave the house unless it stops raining. Is they are two different clauses. The first of them, we will not leave the house, is the main or independent clause. Meanwhile, unless it stops raining, is the dependent or subordinate clause. This is new. A subordinate clause, also called dependent clause, we know that, will begin with a subordinate conjunction, we know that, or a relative pronoun, we didn't know that, and will contain both a subject and a verb. This combination of words will not form a complete sentence. We know that because it lacks of context. It will instead make a reader want additional information to finish the thought. That's why they say they don't have complete meaning. So here you have a list of subordinate conjunctions. That is to say, these are the words which are going to be at the very beginning of a dependent clause, a subordinate clause, right? It is interesting to see that the fact that there are some multi-word units, like for example, even if, even though, in order that, provided that, rather than, so that, and that's it. Which means that in order that, even though it is composed of apparently three different words, it is the fact is that it works just as a single unit. Therefore, it is just one single word. Its name is subordinating conjunction, right? Another important and interesting stuff is the fact that we have WH words. What I mean, what do I mean by that? I'm meaning, I mean the presence of when, whenever, where, whereas, wherever, whether, while, and why, right? Those are those are WH words because they are written with WH at the very beginning. WH at the very beginning, right? Then relative pronouns, that, which, whichever, who, whoever, whom, whose, whosever, whomever. What it means is the following. These are relative pronouns when they replace noun phrases as subjects inside of dependent clauses all over again. These are considered to be, these are considered to be, these are considered to be uh, relative pronouns when they replace noun phrases inside as subjects inside of dependent clauses. If you take a look at the if you take a look at the example one, who's my friend is tall, then the analysis would be, this is the verb phrase, this is the subject, and this is a complement, right? A subject complement. Therefore, this is the noun phrase subject, the verb phrase verb, and an adjective phrase subject complement. Then Juan is the noun head, quite obviously, and who's my friend is a dependent clause, square brackets. As a clause, well, this is a dependent clause. We're going to provide the name dependent clause post modifier. As a clause, then we have phrases inside of it. This is the verb phrase, this is the subject, and this is my friend, right? This is another noun phrase. So three phrases. Who is the noun phrase subject made out of a pronoun head. Therefore, in that example, who is a relative pronoun. Why? Because it's replacing the entire noun phrase subject of a dependent clause. All the rest is just like always. Okay. Ok. Eso. ¿Alguna duda de lo que he hablado hasta ahora, chiquillos?
No, profe.
Ya, vacancito. Paramos 15 y matamos este PowerPoint. Vemos estas tres cosas.
Profe,
Dígame.
o sea, no es de la materia, pero una consulta va a subir la clase anterior a YouTube.
¿Sabéis qué? Mira. Sí, la tengo que subir. Lo que no caché el viernes pasado, ¿qué fecha era? 3. Ahí tengo las clases del 3. Ah, bueno, sí se hicieron. Sí, las tengo que subir, eso.
Bueno, profe, gracias.
Ya, 10:32, nos juntamos a las 10:45. Estamos grabando. Ok. Hemos visto innumerables ocasiones ya que es una dependent independent. Hemos analizado un poquito, pero ahora ya vamos a las tres formas en las cuales se usan. Muy sencillo. Noun clauses, adjective clauses, adverb clauses. So functions of a subordinate or dependent clause. A subordinate or dependent clause may function as a noun, as an adjective, or as an adverb in sentence. On the basis of their function in a sentence, subordinate clauses can be divided into the following types. Okay, the very first stuff I'm going to say is these names, noun clause, adjective clause, and adverb clause, these are one of several different names that they might have. Okay, so if you continue studying grammar, you'll see that these are not the names that most grammarians give to these type of clauses. Okay, when I say most, I won't saying that the entire that the whole number, right? What I'm saying is that there are some other names, and sometimes in grammar books, you'll find them by other names, and that's it. Okay. So no noun clauses, adjective clauses, and adverb clauses. Let's take a look at the very first of them. Okay, a dependent or subordinate clause will be used as a noun clause when a dependent clause that functions as a noun in a sentence is called a noun clause. A noun clause performs the same function like a noun in a sentence. Example, what he did made a problem for his family. And as you can see in this example, and as you can see in this example, what we have is this is okay, made is the verb phrase. Made. What was made a problem for whom? For his family. Right? Right. Now the question is what he did. What is that? I can replace it by a pronoun, right? It made a problem for his family, but I can see that what he did is not a phrase, it's a clause, right? So this is a clause. What type of clause? This is a noun clause, right? Why noun clause? Because he's performing the role of a noun, therefore is doing the role of a subject. As a clause inside of it, we have some phrases, right? So this is the verb phrase, did, this is the noun phrase subject, and this is the subordinating conjunction, right? So I'm going to provide the analysis for this. So what then will be my subordinating conjunction? He is the noun phrase subject made out of the pronoun head. Did is the verb phrase verb made out of the verb head. Then made is the verb head. A problem is a noun phrase, direct object. What was made? A problem. To whom? For his family. This is the noun phrase object, but indirect object. A is a determiner premodifier. Problem is the noun head. For is the preposition head. This is the canonical way. His family. This is the noun phrase complement. Determiner, premodifier, and then noun head. As you can see then, what it did is a clause. Why? Because it has a subject-verb relationship on the one hand. It is not any type of clause, but it's a dependent clause. Why? Because it doesn't have enough context and must be then linked to an independent clause. How is this thing being linked? Well, by the presence of a subordinating conjunction. In this case, the subordinating conjunction what? Right? As every single clause, then it has a name. In this case, this is a noun clause. Why? Because it is replacing the noun phrase and performing the role of a subject, right? So it's acting as a noun. Um, that's it, I think. ¿Preguntas sobre las noun clauses? No, maravilloso. A noun clause works as a noun that acts as a subject, object, or complement in sentence. A noun clause starts with words that, what, whatever, who, whom, whoever, whomever. We're going to review this another one. He knows that he will pass the test. We will provide then the analysis for this. And this is the subject, knows. Who knows? He knows. Noun phrase subject. What does he know? He knows that he will pass the test. So this is the clause. This is the noun clause, acting as an object, right? Instead of this, we have verbs. Will pass. This is the subject. Will pass what? The test. I'll provide the analysis. Pronoun head, verb head, subordinate conjunction. Deme un segundo, chiquillos, por favor. Ya volví, perdón, disculpen. He knows that is the subordinate conjunction and he is the noun phrase subject pronoun head. Will pass is the verb phrase verb auxiliary verb premodifier pass verb head, and finally the test is the noun phrase subject made out of the determiner premodifier, and test is the noun head. And as you can see, it is another example, the noun clause that he will pass the test. It is not placed in the subject position, but in object position, right? And the subordinate conjunction changes. In the very first of it, in the very first of them, the subordinate conjunction is the word what, and in the second one is the word that, right? Any problem? No? Okay. Second element, adjective clauses. These are the ones that some people call relative clauses. I would add some other names to this. They are also called identifying clauses. They are also called restrictive clauses. Okay, so an adjective clause is a dependent clause that functions as an adjective in sentences. Okay, an adjective clause works like an adjective in a sentence. The function of an adjective is to modify a noun or a pronoun. Similarly, a noun clause modifies a noun or a pronoun. Okay. Okay, so in the example, he wears a shirt which looks nice, right? He wears a shirt which looks nice. So he wears a shirt which looks nice. Okay, so the very first thing we're going to do is looking for the verb phrase. Who wears? He wears. What does he wear? A shirt which looks nice. A shirt, and here we have our clothes, right? Right. So the verb phrase verb, the noun phrase subject, the noun phrase object. Be very, very careful. A shirt which looks nice is a noun phrase, right? Because I can replace the whole stuff by a pronoun. He wears that, right? Right. He wears it. Now, the adjective clause, which looks nice, is inside of the noun phrase as a post modifier. Okay. So I'm going to provide the analysis for this. Determiner, pre-modifier, noun head, and here we have the adjective clause acting as a post modifier. Then, as a clause, there are phrases inside of it. So looks is the verb. Who looks? Which looks is the pronoun, the relative pronoun. How does it look? Nice, right? So I have three stuff over here. I have the noun phrase subject made out of the pronoun head, which, the verb phrase verb made out of the verb head looks, and the adjective phrase complement, subject complement made out of the adjective head nice. Okay, I'm going to say it again. An adjective clause is a dependent clause, right? Which works as an adjective. Why? Because it characterizes a noun, right? Second stuff. Adjective clauses, they are usually, not always, but they are usually encountered or placed inside of noun phrases as post modifiers, right? I'm going to say it again. Adjective clauses, they characterizes they characterize nouns, and they are usually encountered or placed inside of noun phrases as post modifiers. Third interesting and important element, which is a pronoun, right? It is replacing a noun phrase. Okay. Here we have some other examples. Uh, an apple that smells bad is rotten. An apple that smells bad is rotten. Quite obviously, the verb phrase from the independent clause is this one. How is this stuff? Rotten. This is an adjective phrase, subject complement. It is rotten. So this noun phrase is the subject. An is a determiner premodifier. Apple is the noun head, and that smells bad then is the adjective clause post modifier. Inside of it, we have three different stuff, right? Smells, how does it smell? Bad. And then here we have that. So that is the noun phrase subject made out of the pronoun head. Smells is the verb phrase verb made out of the verb head. And bad is our adjective phrase subject complement made out of the adjective head bad, and all the rest is just normal. Okay. Uh, why is this thing interesting? Well, it is not that interesting, but the only difference with the very first one of them is the fact that we changed the relative pronoun which by another one. That's the only thing. Okay. Last point. Adjective clauses begin with relative pronouns who, that, which, whose. And this is why they are called relative clauses. Okay. Relative clauses can be restrictive, that is to say, adjectival clauses can be restrictive or non-restrictive. Relative clauses, well, be careful. Adjectival clauses, relative clauses. In this PowerPoint, they state the difference between an adjectival clause and a relative clause. The difference is a relative clause begins with a relative pronoun, right? So when they say restrictive and non-restrictive relative clauses, they are saying they are referring to those clauses which begins with a pronoun. Okay, so relative clauses can be restrictive or non-restrictive. A restrictive clause limits the meaning of preceding noun or pronoun. It provides essential information to understand the sentence. Okay, essential information. A non-restrictive clause tells us something about preceding noun or pronoun, but does not limit the meaning of preceding noun or pronoun. It is not essential information. Okay, okay. In my summary, I would say this. A restrictive relative clause then provides obligatory information, and as it is obligatory, then it is a complement. You can't erase that. Meanwhile, non-restrictive, they provide optional information, non-obligatory, therefore they are post modifiers, right? Let's take a look at this. An old person who dresses like a teenager is object of ridicule. Yeah, that's true. Okay, we're going to provide the analysis then. Is our the verb phrase from the independent clause, and then we have an old person, blah blah blah. This is our noun phrase subject, right? Is this, right? This is our, I would say, a noun phrase subject complement. I would say we don't care much about the last stuff. What we care about is the fact that who dresses like a teenager is important in order to understand the full meaning of the sentence. Therefore, if I erase that, for example, I would say an old person is object of ridicule, you'll see that we are losing a lot of meaning, right? Therefore, you can't erase who dresses like a teenager, right? Therefore, this is a restrictive adjective clause, relative clause, okay? And the only difference would be, I'm going to try to provide this really fast and easy. The only difference then would be the fact that this adjective clause is a complement because it's obligatory, and then you can continue with the rest of the stuff. I'm going to try to contrast it with the second example. Okay. Uh, okay. Old Professor Legree, who dresses like a teenager, is going through his second childhood. So what we have is this is I would say going through is the verb phrase verb. Hay que revisar si going through es un phrasal verb. Puede que me equivoque y que termine en going, ¿ok? Quiero ser honesto con eso. Pero no es parte de la discusión, así que no lo vamos a revisar. Este es el sujeto. Is going through what? His second childhood. Old Professor Degree is going through his second childhood. ¿Tiene sentido? Sí, sí, tiene sentido. Old Professor Degree, who dresses like a teenager, is going through his second childhood. Para entender que está en su second childhood, necesito saber que who dresses like a teenager. En el segundo caso, yo diría que no. Entonces, Old Professor Degree, I would say, es un noun head y este otro es mi adjective clause. Pero como lo puedo borrar, o sea, como es opcional, o sea, como no es obligatorio, lo dejo como post modifier y adentro dejo dresses like a teenager. Las tres partes y usted las puede hacer después. Quiero que mire con atención esa diferencia. Esto es pregunta de prueba. ¿Alguna duda?
No me queda tan claro por qué es es restrictive y unrestrictive.
Ya, es obligatorio o restrictive en la primera debido a que si la elimino, si la borro, no comprendo no comprendo la misma información. Ejemplo, an old person who dresses like a teenager is object of ridicule. Ahí está completa. Ahora voy a eliminar la adjective clause. An old person is object of ridicule. ¿Cambia el sentido de la oración?
Sí, sí cambia, pero siento que si sacamos el who dresses like a teenager in the second one, también cambia un poco el sentido, pues, igual que en la otra. O sea, entiendo que cambia menos, pero no es tan obvio para mí entenderlo.
Ya, cambia menos, sí, te la doy. El otro elemento importante es que en la segunda, si te das cuenta, la adjective clause está entre medio de comas
Ah,
y en la
ya,
primera no. ¿Qué
sí, es verdad.
significa que está entre medio de comas? Es que es un comentario. Extra information.
Ajá,
Hay un elemento de visualización ortográfica también para saber cuándo son restrictive y cuándo son non-restrictive.
ya, ya me queda un poco más claro.
Ujú. ¿Alguien más
Profe,
alguna duda? Dígame.
entonces sería post modifier ya porque va entre medio de comas y en
Va,
cambio y ese es complemento.
claro, claro. Si es
Ah,
complemento es obligatorio, no se puede borrar. Si es post modifier es opcional, se puede borrar. ¿Cachai?
ya, ya, vale.
¿Más dudas? ¿Estamos? Estamos. Último, terminamos. Aquí, aquí. Adverb clauses. Adverb clauses son estas dependent clauses, subordinate clauses, que funcionan como adverbios en una oración. An adverb clause, like an adverb, modifies a verb, an adjective clause, or other adverb clause in a sentence. An adverb clause modifies the situation in main clause in terms of time, frequency, cause and effect, contrast, condition, intensity. To what extent? And here we have the subordinating conjunction, whatever, something. The subordinating conjunctions used for adverb clauses are as follows. Y aquí tenemos las subordinating conjunctions que marcan tiempo, causa y efecto, contraste, condición. Entonces, lo que les quiero contar es lo siguiente. Las adverb clauses son las que hemos estado analizando desde un principio. He takes medicine because he is ill. Takes, who takes, what does he take, why does he take medicine. Y esta es mi adverb clause que actúa como adverbial. Profe, ¿por qué dice eso? Porque se mueve. Y si yo la muevo, es la que cumplía con la descripción de del primer slide de este PowerPoint. Como dije, adverb clause, adentro hay frases. Rápidamente, because es la subordinating conjunction, he es la noun phrase subject, is es la verb phrase verb, ill es la adjective phrase, adverbial, adjective head. Okay, so an adverb clause then is performing the role of adverbial in the valency pattern. That is to say, it adds information about time, place, cause and effect, etc. As an adverbial, this adverb clause is a movable part of it. So you can place it at the very beginning or at the end or even in the middle in some cases. If you place the adverb clause at the very beginning, then you must separate it by using a comma from the independent clause, just like in the second example I already gave you. If you put the adverb clause at the very end, then you don't use the comma, right? Every single adverb clause then begins with a subordinating conjunction. In this case, the subordinating conjunction is the word because, right? And as you can see, the way in which I analyzed it was by just saying sub CJ. Ah, Daniela, me equivoqué yo, pues una cláusula va con cuadrado aquí afuera. Eso.
Ah, ya, entonces cuando es cláusula siempre va con eso.
Exacto.
Ah,
Las
ya.
cláusulas las separamos con cuadrados y las frases con redondos. Me puedo equivocar, perdón. Because he is ill, he takes medicine. ¿Queda claro lo que es una adverb clause? Es la que hemos hablado todo el tiempo. Ah, quiero que miren los ejemplos, porque recordemos que hay subordinating conjunctions que son de más de una palabra. Entonces, primer ejemplo, before he no problem. Because he is ill, no problem. Tercero, although, no problem. Unless you study, no problem. Unless it rains, no problem. You are safe, problema. Porque ahí la subordinating conjunction es as long as. Última, problema. Porque la subordinating conjunction es provided that. Cuidado con las subordinating conjunctions. El listado está arriba en ese lugar. ¿Ya? ¿Dudas sobre dependent clauses, noun clauses, adjective clauses y adverb clauses?
Profe,
Dígame.
con provided that, ahí no se pone como that clause.
No, es una provided that, ya, eso es importante. Déjame ir un poquito más en la profunda con eso. Ya, los PowerPoint nos dicen que las dependent clauses, ¿cierto? Es igual a decir subordinate clauses. ¿Ya? Ya. Por lo que yo he leído, como a mí me enseñaron y los autores que me gustan a mí, nadie les dice noun clause, nadie les dice así. A las famosas noun clauses que dicen en este PowerPoint, todo el mundo las llama nominal clauses. A las adjective clauses, todo el mundo las llama relative clauses. ¿Ya? Y a las adverb clauses, todo el mundo les dice, o yo las conocía como subordinate clauses. Estas nominal clauses, si parten con la palabra that, las llaman that nominal clauses. Las adjective clauses, nunca he escuchado a nadie que haga WH. Quizás les dicen a algunas personas las diferencias entre WH, relative clauses, Y si es que partiera con that, porque pueden partir algunas con that, les dicen that relative clauses. Y las subordinate clauses le dicen subordinate clause nomás. Eso es importante. No sé si eso responde su pregunta. ¿Qué es lo que aconsejo?
Gracias.
Lo que aconsejo para la cátedra, para que sea más sencillo para todos, acuérdense de noun, adjective y adverb clauses. El resto para el que quiera nomás. Sí, Natalia, les poníamos WH relative clauses. Sí. Si quiere, sí, continúa haciéndolo. Si quiere, colóquele noun, adjective o adverb clauses. Y para nosotros, por ahora, está bien. En otras universidades, en otros cursos de grammar, probablemente te exijan los nombres de verdad. ¿Más dudas? ¿Estamos? Estamos. Lo que voy a hacer entonces, mis distinguidos, distinguidísimos, voy a tomar los ejemplos que están acá, de las tres, los voy a pegar en un Word, se los voy a mandar ahora, usted los va a hacer y los vamos a revisar, ¿vale? Son las 11:18. Se los mando al tiro, a las 11:20. Les voy a dar 30 minutos para que los puedan hacer. 11:20, 10 para las 12, 10 para las 12 nos juntamos. 11:50 nos juntamos, ¿vale? 11:50 les mando de inmediato esto a su correo, lo hace y lo revisamos a las 11:50. Eso, nos vemos a las 11:50. Estamos grabando. Okay, so the idea is we're going to do all the examples of noun, adjective, and adverb clauses that we had in the previous PowerPoint. So let's do it. What you said made me laugh. Okay, I'm gonna do it quite fast and easy. What you said, and it made what? Laugh. To whom? Me. Therefore, this is a noun clause, subject, verb phrase verb, noun phrase subject, indirect object, noun phrase object, direct object. And inside of this, we have phrases. So I have the subordinate conjunction and the noun phrase subject, pronoun head, the verb phrase verb, verb head, and the rest of it, right? So the verb head, the pronoun head, this is a noun, laugh, noun head. Okay, next.
Profe, ¿por qué no lo hizo con como la cláusula de abajo, como suele hacerlo, no uno por uno?
¿Cómo?
¿O da lo mismo?
¿Cómo?
Que suele hacer como la noun, la noun clause, subject, y después como que lo divide, no decir abajo de cada palabra lo que es, sino que la cláusula entera.
Eso
Sí, eso mismo.
es que el proceso del tree diagram analysis quiere decir con que vamos a colocar la etiqueta a algo y después vamos a decir qué hay adentro de eso, con otra etiqueta, y qué hay adentro de esto, con otra etiqueta, y así. Entonces, podríamos decir que hay dos formas para esto mismo. Una forma en la que ves aquí, en la que vamos colocando, por ejemplo, cuál es el valency pattern de la cláusula, ¿cierto?
Ajá.
Y abajo colocamos de qué está hecho cada una de estas cosas. ¿Sí?
Ujú.
Ya. La otra forma sería colocar esto acá abajo y continuar de aquí hacia abajo. Pero es lo mismo,
Ah, ya, ok.
¿sí? Lo que no quiero es que te confundas con eso, ¿cachai? La noun clause es el sujeto de la oración. Y como es una noun clause, adentro hay frase. Entonces, ahí está la noun clause con los cuadrados marcados. Y en azul están las frases de la noun clause, ¿cachai? Y esto es el sujeto de esto otro que es más grande,
Ok.
¿sí?
Ujú.
Abajo pasa exactamente lo mismo. Knows es el verbo, he es el sujeto, he knows. What does he know? He knows that he will pass the test. Ahí está la cláusula. Esta es la noun clause, actuando como objeto. ¿Por qué sé que es noun clause? Porque actúa como objeto. No es objeto porque sea noun clause. Las noun clauses se colocan en los mismos lugares que un noun. ¿Sí? Sí. Y un objeto, object en inglés, es la entidad que recibe la acción, o sea, algo como un noun. Entonces, la noun clause, that he will pass the test, es noun clause porque es objeto y no es objeto porque sea noun clause. No sé si queda claro eso. Asumo que sí.
Profe, entonces objeto porque está como en la posición donde iría como el objeto, ¿o no?
Exacto. Y debido
Ya.
a eso es noun clause, ¿cachai? Esa cláusula se pone en el objeto y los objetos tienden a ser nouns, por eso es una noun clause. Lo mismo cuando es sujeto. La noun clause es noun clause porque se puso como sujeto, ¿cachai? No es sujeto porque sea noun clause. Es por donde se colocó. Como dije, noun clause, objeto, verbo. Estas son las frases que está hecha la noun clause.
Profe, una duda.
Dígame.
Entonces ahora se clasifican así porque como el semestre pasado lo hacíamos como that relative clause y de ahí hacia abajo hacíamos el análisis. Ahora
Ya,
eso
es
me
que
genera un poco de duda.
si me preguntáis a mí, yo prefiero que lo hagamos los que estuvieron conmigo el semestre pasado, como lo hicieron el semestre pasado,
Y es que
¿cachai?
me complica más esta forma, como que se me enreda. En cambio
Es
la otra la entiendo mejor.
claro. Ahora, mucho cuidado, que si te equivocas con el nombre en específico, no voy a saber si acaso es nada. Pero igual hacemos diferentes ejercicios, sí, tranqui. Los que lo hicieron conmigo el semestre pasado, como por ejemplo la que está aquí, nosotros la llamábamos that clause, ¿cachai? Es una that clause que funciona como noun. Es una that, porque su nombre de verdad es that nominal clause. Y la de arriba, esa what you said, su nombre de verdad es una WH nominal clause. Los que están recién con nosotros, háganlo como lo estamos haciendo en la pizarra. No se complique. Lo que hay adentro. Verb, phrase, verb. Noun, phrase, subject. Este es el noun, phrase, object. Y esta es mi subordinating conjunction. Que hay acá adentro un pronoun head. Acá hay dos cosas. Hay un auxiliary verb, pre-modifier y un verb head. Y aquí hay dos cosas. Un determiner, pre-modifier y un noun head. Esta es la verb phrase verb y esta es la noun phrase subject. Este es un pronoun head y esto es una verb head y estamos. Sigo. Now I realize what it would have thought. La otra está más dura. Lo primero que voy a decir es el verbo. ¿Quién se da cuenta? I. ¿De qué se da cuenta? What he would have thought. ¿Cuándo se da cuenta? Now. Ese now se mueve. I realize now what he would have thought. I now realize what he would have thought. I realize what he would have thought now. Rapidito, esto es una adverb phrase adverbial. Esto es una noun phrase subject. Esto es una verb phrase verb. Y esto es una noun clause objeto. Dije noun clause, hay frase adentro. Esa. Now es un adverb head. I es un pronoun head. Realize verb head. Esta es mi subordinating conjunction. He, noun phrase subject. Pronoun head. Would have thought. Verb phrase verb. Auxiliary verb. Premodifier have. Auxiliary verb. Premodifier and then thought is the verb head. Eso. La que sigue. I met the boy who had helped me. This is different. I met who? The boy who had helped me. Pero esto es una frase. Y adentro de la frase está la cláusula. Entonces comienzo, verb, phrase, verb, the boy, noun, phrase, object. Entonces, pronoun head, verb, head, determiner, premodifier, noun, head, who had helped me. Aquí está la cláusula. Voy a cambiar de color solo para que quede más claro. Who had helped me. Ahí está dentro. Tiene verbo, ¿cierto? Had helped. ¿Quién? Who. ¿Y a quién? Me. Esta cosa es una adjective clause o bien WH relative clause. Pregunta, ¿es obligatoria u opcional? I met the boy who...
Obligatoria.
Yo creo que es
considero que-
obligatoria.
Sí, porque no tiene coma.
C, ¿cierto? C de complement, entonces obligatoria.
Y no
Y ahora,
dice nada más, entonces solo diría I met the boy.
claro. Y ahora coloco las frases que están adentro. Noun phrase subject who, por el pronoun head who, la verb phrase verb had helped, con dos cosas, auxiliary verb, premodifier had y helped verb head, y me, noun phrase object, ¿cierto? El que recibe la acción, pronoun head. That's it. Avanzo. An apple that smells bad is rotten. Is how. No, esto es una cláusula. Es una oración, perdón. Así. Ahí está la cláusula. Therefore, noun phrase subject, verb phrase verb y rotten es un adjective. Esto es adjective phrase subject complement. Nos dice cómo está esa apple. Entonces, determina premodifier, noun head y es una adjective clause. An apple that smells bad is rotten. Esto es compulsory, complement. Ahí están las frases. Smells that. ¿Cierto que sí? Sí. That smells bad. Noun phrase subject. Pronoun head. smells, verb, phrase, verb head, bad, adjective, phrase, subject complement, adjective, head, is, verb, head, rotten, adjective, head, and that's it.
Profe, en esa, el that smell bad, yo le puse como post modifier porque no la considero como dentro de todo importante la oración.
Yo creo que es súper importante, mira, lee, si yo la saco, an apple is rotten.
Pero esa misma la había usted analizado en la misma clase ahora y la había dejado como post
¿Lo dejé
modifier.
como
por eso
post
le pregunto.
modifier? ¿En serio?
Sí,
Yo creo que me equivoqué.
ya, entonces complement.
Mm.
Ok.
Más allá o más acá de eso, tienes que pensar que cuál es qué es lo que guía y dicta la idea. Esta es si yo la borro, entiendo lo mismo o no. ¿Cachai? Si yo borrara la adjective clause, entiendo lo mismo que si estuviera ahí. ¿Cachai? An apple that smells bad is rotten, creo yo que sería obligatoria debido a que no puedo saber a qué se refiere. Porque si dice una manzana está podrida, una manzana que huele mal está podrida. ¿Cachai? Le da una especificación mayor. Mira, en la que sigue, por ejemplo, tampoco tiene comas. Debería, no siempre, pero debería tender a ser obligatoria. De hecho, es opcional, creo. The book which I like is helpful in preparation for test. Que me guste el libro o no me guste el libro lo hace beneficioso para preparar el test. Yo creo que no lo hace, ¿no? ¿Cachai, Estefanía? Entonces ahí tenía una opcional, pero sin coma. Brígida.
Y ahora me queda más claro.
Marco entonces. Y aquí hay prepositional phrase. Y aquí hay otra prepositional phrase y su noun phrase complement. Y acá está el which I like. Like. Which. ¿Cierto? Sí. Entonces, ahora sí. Noun phrase subject. Verb phrase verb. Adjective phrase. Subject complement. This is una prepositional phrase. Why? No, for what? In preparation for why. It's helpful for the preparation. For why? Cause and effect. Por esa es la causa. Ahora sí. Determine a pre-modifier, noun hits, and this is my adjective or WH relative clause, adjective clause. Esto es post modifier, adentro tiene which, mi subordinating conjunction, tiene I, noun phrase subject, pronoun head y tiene like. Verb phrase verb, verb head. Is verb head helpful, adjective,
Profe,
dígame.
¿por qué en esta es adjective clause post modifier y en el otro es solamente adjective clause? Complement, perdón.
Ya, porque en la de arriba es obligatoria y en la de abajo es opcional.
Ah, ya. Ya.
Ujú. Acá voy. In, preposition, head y preparation for the test, noun phrase complement. Con preparation, noun head for the test, prepositional phrase post modifier. Hecha de la preposition head for y la noun phrase complement test que tiene adentro la noun head test. Y ahí está hecha. ¿Dudas?
¿Puedes repetir esa última parte?
Ya, cómo se analiza una prepositional phrase? Solo pesca esta parte de aquí. Rojo. Solo esa parte. In preparation for test. In es una preposition head y al lado tiene the preparation for the test. Esa es una noun phrase. Complement. No la puedo borrar. Adentro de esa noun phrase complement yo tengo preparation, que es mi noun head. Y al lado tengo for test, que es mi prepositional phrase post modifier. Adentro tengo la preposition head for y al lado test, que es mi noun phrase complement que está hecha del noun head test. Eso. Eso.
Profe,
Dígame.
¿podría explicar a grandes rasgos lo que es la prepositional phrase? Que como que perdí el hilo de eso.
Ya mira, una prepositional phrase es una frase, obvio, ¿no? Y esta frase consta de, muy obviamente, una preposition, pero esta preposition no puede ir sola, tiene que ir con algo, una X. Y esa X es obligatoria, o sea, es complement. Por lo tanto, la forma de analizar una prepositional phrase siempre es preposition head más ese algo que es complement. Ejemplo. For test. Eso es una frase. ¿Sí? Sí. Esa frase tiene una preposition, que es preposition, que es el head, la más importante, es for. Y al lado de for va otra cosa que es su complemento. Esta otra cosa es test. Test es una noun phrase. ¿Por qué? Porque test es un noun. ¿Y lo puedo borrar? No. Por eso es un complemento. Como dije frase, ahora digo que hay adentro. Test es un noun y es el head. ¿Por qué test es una noun phrase? Porque si ves esta otra prepositional phrase, for many reasons, vas a ver que for siempre va a ser la preposition head y al lado tendrá siempre esta otra frase. ¿Qué frase es esa? Esa frase es una noun phrase. Many reasons. ¿Y la puedo borrar? No, por eso es complemento. Many es un determiner, pre-modifier de reasons, que es un noun head. Si te das cuenta, lo que hace la preposición une, en verdad, une su complemento al resto de la oración. Su complemento es, en este caso, una noun phrase, como en preparation for test. Tú te vas a preguntar, profe, pero dice preparation for test, es terrible grande. Sí, pues, puede ser más grande inclusive, porque es una noun phrase, puede tener todo lo que tenga una noun phrase adentro. No sé si le queda claro.
Sí, súper claro, gracias.
Ojo que como complemento, una preposición puede tener cláusulas también, por si acaso. Ya, the house where I live no las vamos a hacer porque ya están ultra hechas, ¿cierto? Ya cachamos cómo se hacen. Solo paréntesis. The house where I live consists. It consists. The house where I live of 4 rooms, ¿cierto? Of, aquí está de nuevo, preposition head, noun phrase complement. The house, aquí está la cláusula, where I live, ahí está el verbo, live, ahí está el sujeto y la subordinating conjunction. Estamos. The person who was shouting needed help, ahí está el verbo. He needed help, she needed help, entonces está el sujeto, que es una noun phrase. Aquí está la cláusula, who was shouting. Was shouting es el verbo, who, noun phrase subject. Que necesitan help. Noun phrase subject. Esta ya la habíamos hecho. Takes, he, que toma medicine. ¿Y por qué? Because, ahí está la cláusula. He is ill, ahí está el verbo. Ahí está el sujeto, objeto y estamos. La que vamos a hacer es la que está abajo. Although he tried a lot, he couldn't climb up the tree. So what I'm going to do is looking for the verb phrase that comes in the independent clause. The independent clause is he couldn't climb up the tree. So the verb phrase is this one, because we have climb up, which is a phrasal verb. Verb here. Then couldn't is my auxiliary verb premodifier, right? He is my noun phrase subject pronoun head. Climb up what? The tree is my noun phrase subject, determiner premodifier, and tree is my noun head. Although he tried a lot is then my subordinate clause. In this case, we also call it adverb clause, playing the role of adverbial, where although is my subordinating conjunction, tried, my verb, who tried, he tried, and then a lot. This is my noun phrase subject, pronoun head, tried, verb phrase verb head, and then a lot. Creo que esto es un adverb, debería ser un adverb. A lot he tried. Ya, sí, eso, sí debe ser un adverb. How much, porque responde a cuánto. Es una adverb phrase. Adverbial hecha de un a lot. Creo que es solo un adverb. Head. Eso lo tenemos que revisar en un diccionario. El resto se hace igual. ¿Dudas, gente, respecto a cómo se hace, qué se hace?
No, pero no alcancé a escuchar lo que era a lot. Era un adjective
Debería,
phrase,
debe ser un adverb. Hay que revisarlo en un
un
diccionario.
adverb.
Debe
Ah,
ser
ya.
eso, porque responde a cuánto. Cambridge Online Dictionary. Cambridge Online Dictionary. Cambridge. Muy seguramente es un determiner y algo más. Lot es un noun. Much often.
Profe, yo lo busqué y me sale como un noun o como un adverbio.
Yo creo que es un adverbio porque nos dice cuánto.
Sí, salen las dos como las dos opciones.
Sí, yo lo dejaría como adverbio. ¿Por qué como adverbio? Porque los nouns hacen referencia a entidades, ¿cachai? Y en este caso no hace referencia a entidad, sino que cuántas veces lo intentó. Gente, quiero escuchar si tienen dudas de cómo analizar subordinate clauses, dependent clauses. Si no me dicen nada, yo asumo que no hay dudas y estamos. Estamos entonces. Ya, el punto es este. Quedado pendiente una cosa que hacer, pero esa cosa que hacer tiene más relación a coordinación que a subordinación. Dejen buscar. Academia, UDLA, Grammar 2, Exercises. ¿Cierto? Yo le había enviado a su correo y lo tenían que hacer para hoy. El ejercicio 1 es reconocer dependent e independent clauses. El 2 es coordinación, hemos trabajado poco de esto. El 3 es complex compound sentences, donde hay que marcar qué es lo que se une y cuál es la dependent. El escribir oraciones, análisis sintáctico. Oh, mira, quedó ahí una rayita. Ya. Vamos a revisar a lo menos el ejercicio 1 ahora. ¿Ya? A lo menos el ejercicio 1 y vamos a ocupar el ejercicio 2 para revisar coordinación. Son las 12:18. Vamos a tomar un break de 15 y volvemos de 20:35. 12:35 volvemos.